what was your introduction to horror video games?
That is such a good question because, like, there were spooky games, right? But
Mhm.
I feel like horror games don't happen until 3D era. I
Mhm.
believe if you can think of a really good 8-bit or 16-bit, like one that I would have played, like I know there was the Japanese game House,
Yeah.
um, that basically invented like survival horror. But I didn't have a Famicom. I didn't speak Japanese. I can remember like the ghost houses from Mario World. I'm like, wait, game Mario World was my first game
Yeah.
ever. So going from this Italian man kills a lot of turtles and has mastered the dinosaur to like 8 levels later, like full haunted house ambience was I didn't know games could do that.
Yeah, I mean, the way you just described that, I just kind of got chills
Yeah,
because I
like
was thinking of the way the door opens and it's like boop 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 boop, and you get lost in those. That's one of
yeah,
the as a like I grew up playing Sega, and so playing Sonic, I have time limit trauma when it
it's
comes
the
to video
water. It's
games.
the water. Yeah,
It's the water. It's the chemical plant
yeah.
rising pink water. I
That's
guess it's
why I
not
don't swim in pink water. It's
exactly.
really
Just don't do it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's games are educational material
yeah.
as we and they
We
always have
learned so
been.
much.
Yeah, but the
And it's
puzzles.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
keep going.
sorry, go on.
I was gonna say the puzzles in the haunted house levels were one of the ones where you could legitimately get a time up,
Yes.
and it would just be like, I can't find this door, and there are these unkillable ghosts that are flying through things, and you've got these
Yes.
like little MIDI pizzicato like strings going as you're trying to, and it's just
Peter,
like,
it's survival horror.
mm,
You can't jump on the ghosts. You can't beat them. There are no stars. And it's like the horror of like all the logic rules of Mario is broken. You're not just going to the right, you're going up, you're going backwards.
mm,
Doors lie to you. Your memory lies to you. It's they are horror.
yeah,
I didn't even think about it until right now because it just
oh
became
man,
normalized. And now they're like a lot more, those were like horror. I feel
mm,
like modern like Mario 3D World type of stuff, when they do the ghost houses, it's more like a haunted house at a carnival at the CNE or the PNE, right? It's like
yeah,
you're on, so many of them are on rails. The
mm,
boos show up, they're never really going to hurt you. You got to run. It feels like a lot more contained and a lot less like you might lose your mind in here,
yeah.
Mario.
I would say the one exception to that, or I would say this isn't the exception to it. I would say it
Sure.
ends with Mario 64
Oh,
because,
just got there playing the All Stars version. How
oh
dare
man,
they? Like, what?
right?
I was 9.
I had trouble sleeping that night, and I had
Yeah.
already played Silent Hill. Like
Yo.
I'd played Silent Hill, and I'd had trouble
Yeah.
sleeping at that, and then I like found the ghost house in Mario 64, and
Yeah.
there's the eyeballs, and there's the piano that comes to life that tries to
Yep.
eat you, and I think that part of that comes with it being a secret level.
Yeah.
The idea that you have to go and you find this, and it's already something kind of occulted. And this is similar to in the book I talk about the creepypasta video series
Yeah.
Petscop. It's
Yeah.
very similar to that because it's like, in Pokemon when you first found the missing no glitch.
Yeah. And you feel like you've transgressed what the game was allowing you to do. Like you've
And yet,
transgressed reality.
and yet it's there,
Yeah, it's
right?
there. Everyone knew it. And like if
Yeah,
you did it wrong, it could break your game. Like
yeah,
there were actual, it was a curse. Like missing no was a curse.
yeah.
I love missing no. I'm really kind of low key, like, deep down pissed off that Nintendo hasn't ever officially acknowledged that.
Yeah,
I'd buy a missing no t-shirt, whatever. Like,
absolutely. Just
we're the
like
glitch generation. We should
give it a trophy and Smash and see how that
Yeah,
goes.
exactly. Like just we all knew it was there.
Yeah, that's how
But
you got your rare candies.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's how you duped. You got 100 master balls, you learned the meaning of hard work and then completely threw it away by by making everything pointless.
Yeah.
Um and yeah, I think it's like that generation where you can move in 3D and games are big enough to know for you to feel a sense of mystery about them. I think is when we really start to see horror come into play. Like the first creepypastas about broken video games, I think, are all like Petscop was like PS1, right? So it's that same
Mhm.
era. I know the 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 kid Zelda one. I forget the name, like
Oh
Chris
yeah,
is Dead or something, or
he's like a drowned boy
yeah, the drowned
who's
boy haunting
yeah.
Majora's Mask,
Hmm.
which I felt was always such a short walk because Majora's Mask is already one of the most legitimately haunting games ever made. So I'm like, I get like, wasn't it already haunted? Like,
Exactly. And it's just like a quick jump,
yeah,
right? You get this little gateway, and yeah, there's just, I think that you're absolutely right. I think that it is in the, when you get to a point where there's enough to explore, but also there is that unfinished nature of that era of games that is particularly scary.
yeah,
Because just finding an Easter egg or a glitch can like you said, like it breaks the reality. It feels very scary, and then
yeah.
you do build that creepypasta out of that. Yeah, absolutely. And then
It
there's
feels like
like,
you're losing control of something, and like so
mm,
much horror I feel is like built around like kind of trying to articulate what we don't fully understand. You say this beautifully several times across the book, how it's like, trying to grapple with the things that we don't have good answers for yet. And I think that's why the new creepypastas are so like tech based. Like
mhm,
I had an N64, but I couldn't make one. I didn't know how it worked. I don't know how code turns into Banjo Kazooie. And so
yeah,
there's like, it's beyond what I can understand. And I know that like knowing that you're playing with something that you don't fully understand is also like half of horror. That's Control is a very recent example that's pretty much about that. So
totally.
I only started playing Bloodborne this last fall.
Oh,
I had been laid off for 4 or 5 months at the time, and it's strange to say it now. It sounds like someone like leading up to telling you about a multi-level marketing scheme, but it really is like I was at the right place to need a win, and I knew that they would feel more substantial if I could do them through Bloodborne. And I sucked for 5 hours, and then I beat the uh, the church beast or whatever, and then I beat
mhm,
Father Gascaine, and then it just momentum. It felt so earned. Like I knew what I did to win. It wasn't just my numbers going up. It wasn't the game decided through a cutscene that I was good. Like I kept going until it was done, and then I got better and I learned. And I mean, you've played this. Like
yeah,
you're beating enemies that were bosses for fun, and it's not a power fantasy. It's just how to move quickly to the next thing.
yeah,
And it very literally made me better at my own life because that momentum carried. I'm like, if I can do Bloodborne, maybe I can work out more. Maybe I can write more. And I think like that's what people don't talk about when they talk about why Bloodborne is their favorite game of all time, why it changed them, because
mhm,
it changes you. You need to rise to a certain level of discipline to be able to beat it, and not in a way that's like punishing or cruel or get good. Like that, I know the community can be like that, very much like just be better at the game, but it's more like the game is fair. It is consistent, and so you can rise to that.
yeah, absolutely. Every time you win, you deserve it, and every time you lose, you understand what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And that that's a really great point. It's one of the few types of games, like I would say all of the From Software versions of this game are like this. You never accidentally progress, and you can't cheat.
Yeah.
uh like some people would say, like, oh well, that's not the real way of doing it, but if the game allows you to do it,
It's valid.
it's valid because it's
Like
so goddamn hard.
I use an axe that turns into a longer axe. I spin to win, baby. Like I
Exactly.
I I play the way I play, but
Hmm.
and it's not even like a like you played yourself, you cheated yourself. Like if like you said, if it's in the game, it's valid.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're leaning on something too much, there will be a part later that requires you to expand your vocabulary. And I say this, still not having finished Bloodborne. I am right at the end. I downloaded the old Hunters DLC, so I'm trying to do that, and that's a whole different flavor. Like I'm right before like Margot's Wet Nurse, and like I know that I'm
Yeah.
about to head into like the final, so I wanted to do the DLC first.
Nice. So
But
you did the DLC first?
I'm doing the DLC, yeah,
Oh,
because you can.
you're in it right
Yeah, I'm
now.
in the DLC right now.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I'm kind of regretting it. I'm like, maybe I should have just finished it, but you have to like get to the end of the game to do the DLC. So anyway, video games, right? Um, I'm
Yeah.
dragging it out because like it feels important. Like I know when I finish this, I'll have like finished like something that took me on a real journey that feels so much more valid, and my emotions when I win feel so much more than when like a cutscene tells me that I am the Master Chief and I just saved the universe. Like I'm like, nah, I beat the two big guys at once, and that feels a lot bigger
Yeah.
than the story where you're automatically great.
I think that another aspect of that, and I know this isn't true for everybody,
Sure.
but it's true for me, and I'm wondering if it's true for you. This game has a very robust character creation system. I make myself. And
Yeah.
so it does feel like I literally am dying every time and that I'm literally beating the game. And
Yes.
it's just like, I'm already, I'm about as frail as I am.
Yeah. No, it
So,
feels like
yeah.
you've gotten yourself through it. I like that you said that because when I read that in the game, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I can relate to this 0%. Bloodborne's character creator is garbage for not white people.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it uses a very, once again, very like technically fair character creator where just a bunch of sliders, right? Nose can go wider, nose can go thinner.
Mhm.
Skin tone is more like RGB mixing, so it's more
Right.
like I couldn't find a paint color that matches what I saw as a recognizable dark skin human tone.
Mhm.
So like my guy looks like he's just like part-time monster fighter, full-time chimney sweep. Like he just looks like he's full, like just straight up coal blasted. And that's the closest I could get to me because I do like we all want to see ourselves in the world more, and we put ourselves in the game. Interesting. Like I'm like, yeah, why would I want the guy who I knew was going to die thousands of times to look more like me? But you want what you want.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this recently in a piece how it adds an extra layer. I love the feeling of progression in Bloodborne, but for the first, especially when you're in Central Yarnum, when I died, it was the only dark skinned character in the game getting stabbed to death by a bunch of intolerant white people holding torches. I'm like, it's it's a weird time for that feeling.
Yeah.
Um, it's like the game is about an intolerant, bigoted society, but like not like that. Like
Mhm.
it's about a society that has absolutely like closed its mind and has decided certain people deserve to die, but it's like not like that. But by me trying to make the game more like me, it becomes like that. So that's
Mhm.
just a fun thing with character creators in general. Like no disrespect to Bloodborne, because like I think From Software's characters are universally kind of weird looking, and like that's not the thing. Like Dark Souls characters are famously janky looking, so I get that that's part of the appeal.
But I
Um,
mean, your experience is a super important and valid
yeah,
experience of that game. And I read that article that was you wrote that for Otaku or Kotaku,
yeah, I
and
am an otaku.
hey, so am I. I've
Yeah.
got a Domo-kun behind me,
Oh
so
my god, beautiful.
gotcha. That's actually Emma's. It's not mine. But
I'd pick up my Gundam model here, but it would fall apart in my hands.
don't we believe it?
We can't. Yeah, yeah. Don't do. We
um,
cannot afford to pay Bandai for this.
Exactly. It is fascinating though, the way that experience comes about, because so much of Bloodborne specifically is based on the lore of Lovecraft, which
Yes.
um, obviously Lovecraft, super horrendous person,
Soups, dupes,
literally
racist.
literally has letters sympathizing with Hitler. Like
Yep.
you can't get rid of it. The
Nope.
interesting thing about Bloodborne is that it's based on the interpretations of the Miyazaki, yeah,
Yeah.
the
Hidetaki.
Hidetaki Miyazaki.
Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Yeah.
It's based on his readings of Lovecraft before he could fully comprehend English, and so
That's the
it's
best.
just pieces of it.
Yes.
And so all of the stuff that, I mean, you read it as a native English speaker, you cannot miss any of the bigotry.
Nope.
But if you're not familiar with the culture and the way that this language is coded, you probably just get this idea of general intolerance based on nihilism and belief systems.
Yeah. And I
right?
feel like that's you said it so well, and you expressed this in one of, I'd say, my second favorite part of your whole book is your through practice argument that we experience Lovecraft through the bits and pieces that has been spread throughout all different parts of society, and that's the most valid way to do it because it also inoculates you against like the source itself, which has become is stoops racist and also kind of irrelevant in the face of what people have done after.
Yeah.
um and I think that's such a cool, like, egalitarian way to approach a super problematic writer, where by like not fully getting it, and that's the best way to get it.
It's kind of perfect, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the way that he does it. And it in terms of Lovecraftian media,
Yep.
Bloodborne is as good as it gets. It's
I
better than the material.
I think people who experience it first through, and I saw this with BioShock as well. If
Mhm.
you're introduced through the game and then you seek out the source, you're like, oh, okay. Like if
Yeah.
you play Bloodborne to completion and then, like, go read The Shadow over Innsmouth, you'll probably be like, oh, okay. I mean, what's next? Like, and and I'm saying this because I did it. I played BioShock and then I read Atlas Shrugged, and I was a jerk for 3 months because that's when what happens when you read a lot of Ayn Rand, and then yeah, it's just this strange thing where sometimes media inspired by something can supplant it in more valid ways.
Um, I'm the same way. When I read something that has a strong ideology,
Yep.
it really takes root in my brain. I have a very
Yep.
strong inner monologue, and I take on that voice in my inner monologue. It's just part
Uh-huh.
of how I learn.
Yeah.
And uh, in the creepypasta essay, I expressed concerns that if I were younger during, I'm not going to name the guy, but there are certain
Yeah.
uh,
Influential
men's
figures.
rights
Yes.
style radicals within the alt-right that I would imagine if I was younger, I could definitely see that kind of thinking being seductive to me. And I have a fear of that. And you mentioned when we were preparing for this call that you had similar experiences. And I think that a lot of that, and I think you do too, comes from the access of vulnerable voices online
Yeah.
that are like uncut. So like every forum post is like a mini Atlas Shrugged,
Yeah.
for an impressionable mind.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Like
So,
Atlas Shrug is almost like obscene in how much it's like, I guess this is a 35-page essay on someone's philosophical beliefs masquerading as a single character talking for 35 unbroken pages. Cool. Publish it. What are editors? But that's the internet. It's just, I could find any channel that could pipe unfiltered individual's thoughts into my brain for a straight day, and that would be like a small YouTube channel. It's unreal, and I think that I really like what you say in that chapter about, like, I think we have this commonality where millennials, depending on if you're an elder or younger millennial, you saw both sides of how internet changed things. I remember literally sitting down and having teachers like teach us how to use keyboards. Like, this is what Alta Vista is. We had this like mnemonic device to memorize all of the keys on a keyboard. I still remember it. Quick Ask Zoe what solves X-rays, even dogs can't. Yeah. I'm
wow.
convinced I'm convinced it's like a Winter Soldier thing where like one day like a man with a dossier will just whisper like Quick Ass Zoe on the street, and I'll just have killed some sort of foreign minister. But
You'll like wake up 2 weeks later
yeah,
covered in blood.
covered in blood. And, like a burner phone rings and I'm like, what stops X-rays? Um 10 people will get that joke and they will have, I don't know where the system comes from, but we were before the internet. We were there. Like, if people are like, technically the internet was around in the 80s, you know what I mean by the internet, where it
Yeah.
becomes an inescapable part of your life, where it's no longer a novelty or a choice. We were before and after and cognizant of both. And I was absolutely an irresponsible teen on the internet. Like you said, role play chat rooms. I'm like, oh yeah, 100%. Like,
Mhm.
I was talking to teens, question mark quotes, like about things. I would skip school to talk to like, to have like, very irresponsible MSN Messenger conversations with like teens in Australia. And it's just, I was so close to so many parental fears, and I was so open and lonely, and I can see so many, I mean, I'll say it, like incel adjacent thoughts that I had in my late teens, very much just casually talking about, nice guys, capital N, capital G. And
Mhm.
it would have been so easy. And that's what scares me, because we share that thing as well. Strong voices can influence me because I work with words. I know and respect the power of them. I like to believe, I think maybe we all do that, oh, it wouldn't get me, right? And like that's how you get in the cult. That's how you get in the multi-level marketing scheme, because it's not about outthinking it. It's about, so you're saying you've never been vulnerable. You're saying you've never been scared. You're saying you've never been in a position where someone could say something to you at the right time and you'd be like, oh, they have a point. I always joke about like wanting to get like a Scientology test to get cleared and to like see if I could beat it. But I'm like, this goes one of two ways. I'm right or I'm super wrong.
Right, yeah, because how many of them entered with that same thought?
Exactly. Yeah. And I can just see so much of myself in when I see these posts, when I get the emails myself, when I write about feminism, when I write about Black people existing, when I get death threats, and when I get added to block lists or like like coordinated hit lists online. It's like I don't know how different we are, and I think that scares me the most, because I
Mhm.
know it's just a matter of circumstances and help.
Yeah.
And on one hand, that's like comforting, like like I want everyone to get the help and the tools, but other hand, like what if I didn't have it? Like how many good conversations and support structures was I away from being a Twitter egg who harasses people all day, or like who just becomes what the internet can turn you into?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. That, and I think it's that empathy that is hopeful, but it's like you said, there's a vulnerability there on our side as well when we're
Yeah.
considering these things. It's like when you are vulnerable enough to understand that you could be like that, then you start to understand that these people are similar, and that's so terrifying.
I said your piece about just what the internet can turn you into was my second favorite thing in your book, but I want to talk about my first favorite thing in your book, because I loved it so much, and I think you wrote something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life, hopefully. It's your final chapter. Not to spoil it, everyone should read the book, but I feel like there's a lot of as a writer as well. I know the challenge of trying to find the words to describe indescribable things, or like, and you also talked about that, how like Lovecraft was like, screw it, it was eyes the color of black holes, and the smell of infinite sadness, and like whatever. But your metaphor about death as the lake over the hill, and how all of these trappings of spookiness and horror are like the fake rises before the real thing. And I just, there was such a vulnerability and such a cut through of like, horror is very valuable and a super multi-fractal lens of seeing everything in life, but it's often an affectation. Like, we are playing at the real thing. We are joking around about how we'd survive the zombies and how we'd deal with a vampire, but like the lake is still the lake. And I don't think I'm going to forget that. And I just want to thank you for letting me read that. And also, I don't know how to tie this into our discussion, but I just wanted to say that I think so much of that makes all of this make even more sense. Like, these video games are all just, we're playing at what it would feel like to feel vulnerable, what it would feel like to, like be attacked like that. But they're all, just like that. They're literal games. And I just was moved and changed by how you put it so properly.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, Mike.
Of course.
I am absolutely. I mean, when you write, as a writer, when you write something, you want
Yeah.
people to experience
Yeah.
something like that. That's yeah. Thank you.
I've read a lot of personal essays. God, like on a G drive, I have my first 30K words of my own personal essay, where you can see it ends right around the time I realize I don't actually have anything to say. But I feel like so many of them play with this dichotomy of triumph and trauma, and how they almost have to be tied. If it's a famous person writing, it's like, but here's all the hard things I went through to justify my fame. And if it's someone who is mostly highlighting their trauma, it's almost like, trying to say, and it was worth it because one day, I got over it, or one day I will, I'm on my way to big things. Like, they have to be tied and they have to justify each other. And you so beautifully, again, write about how, like, you write about both things, but they just are things. Like, you don't put trauma as like a growth experience. You talk so much more. You talk so beautifully about post-trauma and how that's unexplored in comparison. And yeah, I just thought this book kicked ass in terms of everything, and just avoids being so many other personal essays by just threading new needles. And that's the dream, right?
Yeah, that is. Thank you. Thank you again.
No problem.
And thank you for spending so much time with me talking about this stuff. This was super fun.
Yeah, this was rad. I mean, good. It's just like that old rooftop backyard again.
It's backyards of the skies are filled with wonderful conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should just do this again.
Yeah, we should just hang out. We're legitimately friends. But
exactly. Yeah.